Hello there.
Howdy, howdy. Welcome to our weekly league show. We have finished the league officially, so this will be the season ending, the season recap. We'll recap last week, but we'll also recap the season.
I'd much rather talk about the season than last week for
Yeah, I
whatever
would
that's
too.
worth.
We can very quickly. Of course, the team that we bowled doesn't really want to talk about last week either.
None of us want to talk
So
about it. Yeah.
yeah, nobody
There
wants
are
to
weeks
talk
like
about
that. Yeah.
last week. So yeah, we'll kind of skim through last week, and then we'll talk about the season, where we finished up, how everything went overall, and then we'll give a kind of a look at an early look to the draft for next year. So partially because if you like the draft idea, if you like the idea of this league, and it's something that you want to try to get started, this will give you some ideas and some information on maybe making that happen in your neck of the woods.
Mhm.
So,
Which we've
uh,
also just kind of dovetailing off of that, the virtual league that I run in Luke's server for his Patreon and YouTube members is very heavily based on this league. And I mean, a draft league of any sort, there's going to be small hiccups here and there. You're going to have teams where they don't really get along, but even for a virtual league, it's translated really well and it's a lot of fun.
yeah,
So, and kind of similar to fantasy football is like the draft, the team building process for captains and for kind of people who are watching along, I think is a lot of fun as well. So
yeah, and that's
obviously,
just
yeah, it's a little different here because the draft for this league is technically behind closed doors.
mhm.
So I mean, technically, what happens in the draft room stays in the draft room, aside from final rosters. But I mean,
Mhm.
people find out about stuff anyways, so it's kind of
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. The that's what they'll say is that there's things that happen in the draft room
Yeah,
that they say, oh, don't let this out because they don't want people to get their feelings hurt. But everybody knows that it happens,
yeah,
and it's not like oh well, somebody traded you, and so it's like, I mean, whatever.
yeah.
I mean, some so
I mean, if someone got drafted and then dropped post draft, I feel like that'd be a little different.
yeah, that'd
But
be a different
but
story. 'Cause
like an even trade, unless you really wanted to bowl with one person and really didn't with the other, is kind of like whatever type
Yeah,
of
if
deal.
you end up in a bad situation, and that's one of
Yeah,
the things to consider with a league like this is that a lot of leagues people want to pick their team and they want to sign up with that team, and then they don't want to take the chance on bowling with somebody that they may not want to bowl with or somebody that they may not know or whatever else.
yeah,
The fun for them is in bowling. It's not necessarily anything else. And this league is kind of a hybrid. There's the people in this league have been there long enough that even if you're not bowling on a team with somebody, there's a
yeah,
lot of familiar faces every single year. And it is kind of fun and different to mix it up a little bit every year and bowl with different people rather than the same, because some people get in those kind of ruts too, where they're like, well, gosh, I don't want to. It's an easy way out, especially if you've had those teammates where you're like, I don't really want to bowl with this person anymore,
yeah,
but you feel like you have to keep signing up with the same team every year anyway. This
yeah,
one, whether you're a captain that gets to pick an entirely new team or whether you're in the draft pool and end up on an entirely different team, either way it works out.
yeah. Or then there's Trent Overby, who always bowls with the exact same people every year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The same thing
Yeah,
can work, and people will actually kind of let that happen in this league too. They kind of understand
mhm,
that certain people are going to pick certain other people, and so
yeah,
knowing that Trent is going to pick Mike Hathaway first in the draft
mhm,
next year, that's just going to be a thing. And so, even I think if Mike was a little bit higher up in average in the before Trent, he's kind of in the perfect spot where Trent ends up averaging, and what
yeah,
Mike ends up averaging is kind of like in the perfect spot for Trent to take him first anyway. It's just one of those things that happens to work out. But even if it didn't work out so perfectly, I think that it would kind
yeah.
of still happen.
Yeah, they usually combine, I'm guessing, for like 440 to 445 ish most years,
Yeah,
which is a really nice spot to end up for a second round pick. But I mean, we
yeah,
can, if we get to it, we can definitely talk a little bit of kind of team building strategy because you and I are at opposite ends of the draft. Talking is very difficult.
Yeah, and people say never tip your hand or whatever, but between us, there's really no possibility of that happening, and especially
Yeah,
we kind of talked about who we're interested in and who we think that we are going to have the opportunity to get.
yeah,
We're just at opposite ends of the spectrum.
yeah.
Like,
You're
like
picking first or third, depending on how many teams we've gotten. Assuming the captains we think do come back, and
yeah,
then I'm picking last no matter what happens in the first round. So it's kind of I'm at the mercy of literally everybody else, and you get to pick before almost everybody else. So it's kind of
yeah, and
fun spot to be in for both of us.
yeah, and kind of in my position, I need to kind of get who I can get and then figure it out down the road. Your position is like, well, I can get who I get, but I also control how much I screw myself in the second round,
Yeah,
basically. So it's one of those things where it does kind of work like fantasy football. You've got to have that same mentality. It's like, okay, did you get the first pick of the draft? Are you picking 10th?
yeah.
There's a few fewer I mean, there's only 3 rounds to this draft,
Instead of like 15, but yeah.
but that
But it
makes it
is
almost a little bit
yeah.
more important.
Yeah, and the draft order being based on cumulative team average. This is
Yeah.
about as close as you're ever going to get to an auction draft in a bowling league. So that
Mhm.
part, the economics of it is kind of fun. So,
All right, so
yeah, I guess
let's
let's talk
briefly
week
recap last
34.
week.
Hang on, I need to go throw up in my trash can real quick.
Yeah, this was bad.
Okay, we're good. Moving on.
I set on the pair with 642. That tells you all
Yeah.
you need to know
Yeah.
from a team that Russ's team average is solid.
Yeah. Our team
Ours
average
is
was
really
really
good,
good. Yeah.
and the pair sucked
This was the first time we shot under 2,500
on the year. Yeah.
all year.
Yeah, this was our worst set by over 100 pins
Yeah.
as a team.
I think the number was like 125 ish.
Yeah,
Like 25-18 or something like that.
which is kind of crazy. We all lost except for Noah. I think Noah's the only one that didn't lose a pin off of his average.
Yep.
Because I was 100 under, you were almost 100 under. Noah
I might
was
as well have been.
Yeah. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you can just look at it and I was not quite 100 under. You were not quite 100 under. Jaden was not quite. She was like 60 or 70, but it was a bad night. The back ends were tight, and
Back ends were tight. This is the tightest pair, at least in my opinion. And this is something that's kind of shifted over the course of this year. Is 15 and 16, I think, is the cumulative tightest pair below the dyno ramps where you usually film below the dyno ramp pairs where you usually film videos on your channel. Like
it kind of
on the right side, it's just so weird. It never really opens up all that much.
Well, it felt kind of like watching the World Championship where EJ, like, they could all hit the pocket on that show easily, but getting the ball to go through the pins the right way. We had two 710s in the first frame, I believe.
Yeah, Russ and Noah, if I remember right.
Yeah, so it was just right off the bat, it was bad. It was hard to carry, and then when you started chasing carry, it got even worse. And then I was throwing it good in practice and good the first game, and then I got into doing something funky trying to carry, and it just tailspinned, and I had all kinds of splits that last game. That just the worst luck that you could think of.
I really nights like this are tough for me to kind of triage after the fact because I mean like you said, I could hit the pocket pretty much at will. I couldn't carry like pin carry was definitely a lot more difficult than normal. And I felt like I didn't have very many big misses, but part of how I averaged 240 is I was able to get a lot of my small misses to strike and none of those struck.
Really so that's the thing is I think a bigger part of your season was not the big sets. It was the low sets being 650, 660, 670.
Yeah, exactly. I think this was my third set all year below 670, third or fourth. So yeah, just a really, really high floor, and I haven't had nights like this very often. This was definitely the first time all year that I didn't break 220 for a game. So
Yeah, we might have actually had
It
a little bit
happens.
more of a fighting chance if a couple of their bowlers had showed up with as tough as the.
Yeah.
So I think that actually, I thought that was going to benefit us because their combo, we were thinking that it was going to be Dingle at 2-0 something.
Yeah.
And then, well, he's not going to make it. And I thought, oh gosh, is Larry going to be here? And he was actually out on the road with Jayhawk. And so their combo averaged 212. I'm like, okay, well, that's right at Noah. That's manageable.
Yeah.
I was just shooting at a 213 blind, and I thought, okay, well, that
Manageable.
should be really manageable.
Yeah.
And then, you and Russ is just going to be a you and Russ thing because
Maybe.
Russ perennially averages 233 might actually be one of his lower averages over the
I'm
last
actually
several
kind of
years
curious.
because
I'm
he's
gonna look this up
always
real quick.
north of 235. And
Yeah.
the few years, like this is a bad year, 233 and probably 232 by the time you factor in. But 232 is a bad year for us. If you go back and check, if you just go onto bowl.com, everything's going to be 230, 240.
Yeah. Let's see. Going back, starting in 2013 to 2014, 234, 237, 239, 233, 235, 238, 233, 243, 239, 240, 230, and then he finished at 32 and change, I believe, this year.
Yeah.
So
So a guy like that does not simply shoot 640. So
pretty much.
that's
I had Russ and I limping to a combined, what is that, 1273 between the two of us.
yeah.
Not on my bingo card.
That's one of those things where you can kind of get upset about the night,
Yeah.
but at the same time, you've got to use some barometers here too. It's again, they've been talking a lot about scoring pace on the PBA this year because they'll have some tournaments where people just score crazy, and other tournaments where it's just awful, and they've been all kinds of all over the place in between. A lot of the TV shows have been ugly too, and so that's when you have to start looking to pace, whether it's high or low, rather than a specific number. Like it, just because you shoot under 220 doesn't mean that's a bad score if everybody else is shooting under 200. If you're shooting 210 when everybody else is shooting 190 or 20, you're in good shape. So just because you're not hitting a certain specific number doesn't really mean anything. And this is one of those nights where the pace was low, and we were just lower.
Let me pull this over real quick, and we can. Because I forgot to put this in the doc. Hopefully, you can see it. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were on what ended up being the lowest scoring pair in the league for the season,
and we helped that out a lot.
We a little bit, but I mean, like you said, though, is like pace and environment matters. They put down 2024 Wayne Webb for the Players Championship, and it was a strike fest. I pulled on the exact same pair in McPherson, and 200 was a good game that was beating most of the field on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like there's so many little environmental factors. And I mean, 7 and 8 was actually the highest scoring pair, and it was a solid 4.5 pins a game. Almost, 4.5 pins a game or so over 15 and 16.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, no matter who you bowl, like scores are going to be down, like scores are going to be high in kind of the low to middle end. And then you get up on the, hit 15 and 16 or 3 and 4 was all over the place this year.
Mm-hmm.
Catch one of those and just hold on for dear life and hope it's a good night, not a bad night for that pair.
Yeah.
So as far it was, and I think this kind of contributed to myself mentally a little bit. Game 3, I'm guessing it might have been there a little bit for you, just kind of the frustration of limping home to the finish a little bit. But we did fall. We were in 4th after our big set against Trevor in week 33, and then obviously we lost. What was that? 23-9, which was not very fun, but we haven't had many of those, and ended up finishing 8th in the half. Trevor's team also did narrowly pass us. Well, not narrowly, by a lot, by 250 pins. Passed us for team total pinfall on the year, but we did finish. We essentially had enough of a buffer from the first half to hold on to the team points title for the season. So.
Yeah, and realistically speaking, when we were talking about this 5 weeks ago, and we said if we can get 100 points in the last 5 weeks, we got 101.
Did we really?
Yeah, because
I hadn't done the math on that.
we were at 92 over the last 4 weeks, and then we got 9, and so we did hit the goal of 100 over, and especially the
Yeah.
teams that we bowled.
Yeah.
I mean, Russ and Trevor, and look at this, because we bowled Crouch, who finished second,
Yep.
Baumgartner, who finished third, Wilson, who finished fifth, Rhodes, and then
Yuri.
So
yeah, Yuri was back in week 30.
So yeah, I mean, 3 of the last 5 weeks we were against top 5 teams, second, 3, and 5.
2, 3, 5.
And yeah, so getting 100 points out of that was going to be optimistic. That was an optimistic. I hope we can make this happen and put us in a good position. Now, it still wasn't quite enough to get us in anything super decent. Third was realistic for us if we would have had, if everything would have been flipped.
Yeah.
If we would have got, but it would have been, if we got 20 instead of 9, that's an extra 11, 302. So we probably still would have been fifth unless we absolutely just whacked them. But with them shooting 24, whatever they shot, we could have gotten 25. So we could have gotten up to third. I think fourth or fifth would have been realistic.
Third, fourth, fifth was about as high as was ever.
Yeah,
ours.
that was the ceiling 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so it's a little disappointing to be in 8th, but it was awfully competitive.
I mean, yeah, we're in 8th, but I mean, 8 out of 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of what we were talking about when we started looking at the stretch run is top 5, both halves, top 5 overall. That's the actual metric of success in this league. Anything past that is a fluke. So yeah, not necessarily a fluke, but almost you get into a little more random chance.
Mm-hmm.
You start talking about win versus third or third versus fifth type of deal. Like you can see it going either way. But,
and so we went first, 8th, but first overall in the league based on total points.
Yeah. Crouch's team was really, really solid this year. And
well,
they had a huge week to get him up to second.
That's what I was telling Jonathan on Monday. Yeah, they got 31 points, and that helped them really sneak up in there. But at the same time, they were in the position. They put themselves in the position to have a good week at the right time and finish off. And they actually finished second in both halves.
Yep, second both halves and second overall, I believe. Yeah, second overall.
And that was one of the teams that we were talking about was going to be, on paper, coming out of the draft. That was one of the teams that we liked at the beginning of the year. And obviously Trevor's team was up there too, but they had the highest average against in the league, or they could have whacked everybody.
Yeah. No, Trevor's team was shoot, I just had the number up. Sorry. Where I was literally just looking at this right before we came on the air. So the league average for the season was 215.49.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor's team averaged 223.
Mm-hmm.
That's just disgusting. Like, that is actually disgusting.
Yeah. So basically, we ended up with the high points total, and we still did pretty good the second half. Realistically, we just had a few bad weeks, and we were without Jaden for 8 weeks, and had a few more things going on the second half than we did the first half. But we did well enough the first half that kind of held us up. So we started strong, we finished strong too. Yeah. Realistically,
I mean, ultimately, like I'm looking over at our week by week results. First half, the first 5 weeks we had 97 points. Second half, first 5 we had 71. So I mean, let's just, for the sake of hypothesis, add 26 to that. 315, we're right in there with the shout. Just had a couple of rough breaks early on, and then 3 weeks in a row where we had a 3-week stretch. We had a 5-week stretch from 25 to 29 where we only took 68 and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, you flip either one of those and we're right in there. So
yeah.
Ultimately, that's how the cookie crumbles, but it was just, really strong season overall. Sorry, you got a question to answer.
Yeah. Joinlet catching up. If a bowler's absent, can that absent bowler actually receive points for a win over a non-absent bowler? They can't receive singles points, but the points will still count towards the team total. So like when I bowled Mason last week, he technically won 3 individual points from me, but they did not count towards his personal individual total for the year.
Yep. But they were still credited to the team.
Yeah, they were still credited to the team. And so that's basically
in the context of the match. Yeah.
So yeah, they also keep individual points totals, and you cannot, and they have a year-long MVP and the points total, which James got both of them. You got the points title and the points percentage title, because if you're not able to make it every week, you're not going to get the points total. Highly doubtful. If you miss 5-6 weeks, it's going to be really hard to get the high point total, but you can still get high point percentage or high percentage points won. So this would be, again, it's 32 points a night. So it's 4 individually bowling the person across from you, 1 per game, 1 for total, and then 4 for each team game and team total to come up with 32. And so Mason still got 3 of those points toward the overall night total, but they did not show up on his personal points won for the year.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah. I did figure out, let's look at this little part right here. I think I figured out why we bowled well this year.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of, yeah, I had a theory because I had the 14th pick in the draft this year. It was like, if you fell to me, that was just the easiest smash pick in human history, because I knew you were good. I knew you were going to be good for more than 212, essentially.
Yeah,
I didn't.
One of those. Not sure where it was going to land, but
yeah. But like
it'd be better than that.
Yeah, exactly. It worked out where I went you, then Jaden, then Noah, and I was able to get 3 bowlers who I was pretty happy bowling with, all at their floor. And realistically, from the 14th pick in an 18-team draft, yeah, we actually had, on paper, our team average coming out of the draft was, where is it? 3rd lowest in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't upset with that at all, because I had penciled us in for plus 20 off of draft cost.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, if we get there, then we'll be solidly competitive, and we can figure the rest out as we go. And I mean, Jaden was up almost 13. Noah's up 3 and a bit, which I still think 212 is closer to his floor than his ceiling.
Yeah.
You got to 22, which is not even, I view ceiling as probably 26, 27 for you right now. That was a ceiling case for you this year.
I'm thinking if I'd have been better on 7-pin specifically, my all picked up average was like 226.8 or something like that. And the vast majority of my misses were 7-pins. Yep. And so we're thinking if I just pick up my 7-pins this year, I'm 24-25. Probably. And I feel like that's a comfortable play unless I start getting in a whole lot extra practice or whatever else. 25 is kind of where I feel like I'm at. So if we want to pivot to kind of previewing next year's draft and just more or less because things are going to change. We've got some captains that may or may not be back. We've got some other people that may or may not be back. Some people that were in the league this year that might sub next year, that might be a combo team or whatever else. But this is more for the benefit of anybody watching. And if you want to do something like this yourself in your area, if you want to try to start a league like this, there have been a couple of people that did start leagues like this, and I'll have to reach back out to them and see how it went or what they thought. But and I know that you won't know any of these names, but it's just working through the process and the thought process of actually doing this.
Yeah, could you take my screen share and make it like full screen so that we can see it a little better?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So to kind of explain, do you want to work through 18 or 16, Luke?
Let's work through 18 because I really think that we're going to have 18. We normally have 18.
Okay. So essentially, the way captains are selected is the top returning averages, the top 18 returning bowlers by average who have at least 2/3 games bowled from the previous season.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, this is what our list looks like. Got Alex Hardman, who works at Jayhawk, Jesse, who is co-owner of Royal Crest, you, Jeff White, who I bowled with, a bunch of other really solid bowlers in there. Zach, Eric had a phenomenal year. Russ did finish at 33. That's right. And then I have the last pick. And so what'll happen is, everybody goes through in order for the first round. And we'll go through. So Alex picks, then Jesse, then Luke, then Jeff, and so on and so forth. At the end of the first round, draft order gets reset to then be second round as lowest to highest combined average.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, Luke, you're at 222, Jesse's at 221, and I'm just going to pick a couple random names here. Let's say you take Nathan Hardman and Jesse takes Keeler with his first pick. Your combined average is 430. Jesse's is 442 after the first round. So then that's when the resort comes into play. And it's not something you're going to be thinking about as much in the first round, but it's definitely something I'm going to be looking at is because I'm picking towards the end of the round, is where do I want to pick in the next round? And so that's a lot of kind of that strategy that comes into it.
Yeah. So, looking at this list, we do have probably a couple new names to the league this year. Jerry Gentry and Tobias.
Tobias, and I'm actually going to see Don in the sport league over the summer, so I'll have a better idea of whether or not he's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be on a 211, 212, but really solid bowler, and I think he will probably go for more than that if he does join this league.
Yeah, typically we have 4 to 5 higher average or captain average level new bowlers enter the league. It makes it a whole lot more interesting when we don't. So for this one, we're going to have a couple. We're going to have a couple people that are in there with higher averages.
Yeah, last year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, sorry, 5. Yeah, we had 5 last year that were coming in. No, 6. Sorry, 6 bowlers coming in with an average above lowest captain last year.
Mm-hmm. So this year it would only be 2.
This year,
that we know of anyway.
Two on the board right now, but I mean, realistically, there are probably going to be a few more people that throw their name in the hat. This is a pretty thin draft board as a whole. This is 56, 18. This is 74 total bowlers on screen right now between captains and available bowlers.
Right. Yeah.
To fill 72 spots.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, historically speaking, that would be pretty thin for this league. 2 years ago, I think the draft board was in the mid 80s, and I think it was 79 or 80 for last year's draft. So that's where some of the later round strategy comes in, is okay, and to put it bluntly, is okay, how many people are going to be left that I don't want to bowl with, and then kind of making sure that you don't get stuck in a position where you have to take one of them.
Yeah, when you have if you've got so many, you've got an extra 12, 14, 15 people, you're not concerned so much about it because you'll still have a fairly large draft pool. But with it being this tight, pretty well everybody that's on the board is going to get drafted. And if you are a later pick in the last round, you might it's well, I don't really like my options, but I got to take somebody. So
yeah, exactly.
Fortunately, this league is not. There are very, very few people. I can't say that there's anybody on the draft board that I'm I'm not bowling with them. There are a handful where I'm I'd kind of prefer not to. But I think that's the cool thing about this league, is that you're not going to be storming out of the draft going, "Oh my God,
my team sucks." Yeah.
Yeah.
It might not be the most optimal, but even a suboptimal team. And actually, here, let me go back. So I thought this was a really cool graph. This is a look at season points on the year. And there's 34 weeks, 32 points available per week. That's 1,088 points available.
Mm-hmm.
And our low to high spread was 648 to 409.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that feels like not a very big spread, realistically. I mean, it's kind of 60% win rate on the high end, 40% on the low end. But because of how the draft works, even if you end up with a not great team, you're usually going to still be able to be at least decently competitive.
Yeah, and especially because it's split into halves too. It's not just the one big long season, and so that's going to make things a little bit tighter than it would otherwise be. So,
do you want to just kind of delve into the strategy of it a little bit? Do you want to just kind of talk through, a way we could possibly see the first round unfolding?
yeah, because the first round is somewhat predictable. Everything after that's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, because of the reorder element of it, and there's going to be guys playing for position and guys picking someone they know, or taking a gamble on somebody, et cetera, et cetera. It is really hard to predict after the first round, but even kind of having I had a ballpark idea, at least off of this board, of kind of the type of decisions I'm going to be staring down, even if I don't know the exact names.
Yeah, and that's the important thing is trying to figure out where about you're going to be at in the second round, and that can help you predict who you are going to be able to get, not necessarily who everybody else is going to get, but it should put you in a zone of, okay, well, I think I will be in this range of names, and if I'm in this range of names, then that would also put me in this range of names.
Then I'm looking at these
round.
guys being available next round type of idea.
Yeah. So first round is, and sometimes the first round's not even predictable. I mean, some of these, I have no idea what some of these people are going to do.
Yeah.
So I would think
working through it, Alex, he goes a little more predictable, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What do you think he would be looking at here?
I would almost think that if Jerry Gentry's on the board, I would almost think he's just going to take him, because he's just like, okay, I'm the first pick in the draft. I need somebody. I need an average wherever that puts him in the second. Again, because I've done it both ways before. I've gotten a 3-bowler and I've kind of played the long game for better picks in the last couple rounds, and the long game does not work as well as getting who you need to get. Basically.
I don't know. It works okay if you draft at 211 that ends up at 222.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those things we're going to talk about with the Danny Bradley, who was on the board at 217. This is his worst average in years, but he's historically been 230, 235. And so that's one exception.
Yeah.
Where whoever gets him in the first round could be looking at some pretty good things.
They're drafting their anchor, essentially, which is kind of gets back to the concept of drafting at a ceiling versus drafting at value versus drafting at a floor. Is like, drafting Danny at 217, that's as close to a floor as he's ever been in his life.
And that's kind of what the
Warren doesn't like. That's not ceiling for him, but that feels kind of about right, for example.
Mm-hmm. That historically, that's
about right to maybe too high.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that's part of the internal process as I'm kind of going through and looking at this.
Yeah. So normally what happens is that the first 5 or 6 picks, or the first 5 or 6 captains picking, are typically picking an anchor bowler.
Yeah.
They're not picking because they were most of them were going to be 3-hole bowlers in the season. So I think that's it's a different mindset when you're picking early, because you have a lower average and you can successfully take a higher average bowler and have it not hurt as much. You may still be middle of the second round, but the big averages at the top end, they're going to have to be a whole lot more conservative. They're going to have even if they have the options available, they are also going to have a hard time just not putting themselves at the very end of the second round.
Putting themselves in a hole for second or maybe even third, depending on how steep they go.
Yeah. So I would say that Alex would go on ahead and because if I'm looking down the rest of the names, could he go Tobias maybe if he doesn't want to take the average hit of Jerry?
Yeah.
Sure. I don't see him picking Keeler. I don't see him picking Jonathan. I could see him going Ryan Klaus, maybe Caitlin.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I would think it'd be Jerry, Ryan, or Caitlin, I would think would be on Alex's radar. But I would also think the first pick in the draft, you're going to want some firepower. So
yeah, exactly. You
go for
kind of
the
you get that spot, and you might as well take
Mhm.
like you want to take advantage of it.
And I think that's a familiar name too, because
Yeah,
uh,
Jerry's been around the bowling scene in the area long enough that Alex knows who he
yeah.
is. Yeah. And
So
then Jesse knows Tobias, and I have to think I can see Jesse picking two ways, and I'm curious to
mhm,
get your take on this. Number one is he goes for firepower. I assume he knows Jerry. I know he knows Tobias.
mhm,
I
yeah,
have to think I have to think Jesse takes the highest name who he knows
yeah,
by average. Whether
mhm,
that's Jerry or Tobias, I think that's how that plays out. Which unfortunately takes who I think one of your top names is off the board, but also tease you up to take Danny with your pick at 3 overall.
there's there's I have upside, I think, either way. I think that
Yeah.
barring having a couple other higher averages now we're dealing with what we've got right now,
Yeah.
and barring, Tyler's been talking about moving too, so that might
Yeah,
bump
that would
everybody
be
up
interesting.
one in the
Okay.
draft, and so that would
That would
actually
actually
bump
bring Steve in as a captain.
Keeler,
Yeah.
which changes it because I think Jeff is an insta pick for Keeler if Keeler doesn't become a captain.
Yes, which is why I went on ahead and put Steve there, as Jeff actually told me last week that if Keeler is there, then it's a no-brainer for him. They're both
Yeah,
together
yeah.
this year, and they get along really well.
Well, that's even the funny thing because historically Keeler's been higher than this too.
Yeah,
Like so he's even
that's another closer to floor pick for season cost.
yeah, because Keeler averaged 205 for the first half pretty much. And
Yep.
so he got all the way up. He got an extra 15 pins on his average the last half of the year. And that's, once you're getting later in the season, adding a pin to your average every single week is extremely difficult. So he probably, I think he started figuring it out after
Yeah,
Thanksgiving or
yeah, he
November,
was.
December.
He bottomed out at 207.85 the week before Thanksgiving,
Uh-huh.
and then second half he averaged 230.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think if Keeler's there, that's a no-brainer there. I think Bo McVeigh in the 5 spot is our first wild card. He's kind of a little bit of an unknown.
Yeah.
He bowled with he actually took Jim Kent with his first pick this past year and seemed pretty happy with that. It's funny, he had the same team this season as he did last season.
Yeah.
Like the exact same team. So I don't know. A little bit of an unknown, but I also see Bo as the sort of guy who would take a quirky value pick that he's bowled with before
Mm-hmm.
and use that to play for second round value. So
Yeah.
barring any objections from you, and Pause and Klaus, I could maybe see him going for Klaus.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he would take Caitlin at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of like he's looking at either this tier right here or making a value play, realistically.
Yeah.
And if you at 439, he's going to have to dip into the, below 215 to undercut that if he does want to play for an early second.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. What are you thinking here? Just kind of.
Yeah, he's one of the tricky ones that I really have no idea. Him, Nick Vaughn, I have no idea. I really don't have a beat on what Eric Moore is going to do either yet. Anyway, I mean, we can see what names are available when we get down there, and that gives us a little bit clearer picture. I could see him picking Kevin Burrell. Actually, I know that as far as people go, sure, Kevin 220 is one of the higher averages I think he's ever had, but he did have a really good season. He keeps things simple. He keeps it in play, and so he's one of those that I think that even if he doesn't average 220 again, I think he's an easy lock for 215. Plus, he's just a cool dude, and I think that that's kind of Bo's vibe.
Yeah, Bo just likes cool, chill dudes who aren't super loud, don't make a lot of drama.
Yeah. So I think that Kevin would be in his wheelhouse. Now, if he goes for a value pick, I'm not even really sure. That's still.
I still think Jim Kent is in play for this pick for him.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
because Jim averaged 208, and I think that's closer to his floor. So yeah, let's go ahead and plug him in to make it interesting.
Okay, yeah, I want to get a couple of value picks in here as we go through.
And I think Jim, Jim could he had a little bit of a slow start to the year too. I think that Jim could probably, and I know that the week that we bowled him, he whacked me pretty good.
Yeah. I
But
mean, he finished it, he finished at 207, but he was 216 the back 12 weeks.
yeah, so that's closer 210, 215.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's getting somebody he wants to bowl with, plus a good value pick that's going to also give him a higher pick in the next round. So
Yeah. Which 431, that's got to be. I got to think that's going to be close to first pick at this point. Looking at what else is on the
okay.
board. So
Kreitzer, I'd go on ahead and put Ryan Klaus.
Yeah.
Because he bowled with him last year, and Ryan would be a great. Yeah, and I would lock in Jonathan for Crouch too, because it worked out. Ryan worked out really well for Jay this year, and Jonathan and Jason worked out really well together, because Jonathan was +8 on his average versus last year too, and he averaged quite a bit the last half of the year because he was also lower to start the year, and so I think Jonathan had a really good second half too.
Yeah, his first half was actually 221, but he kind of turned on the afterburners. He was gone for 3 weeks, weeks 24 to 27.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back from then, so the last what is that? 8 weeks, he was 230.
Yeah. So that I remembered him having a really good kind of close to the year.
Yeah, the afterburners were fully engaged.
Yeah. So Alex Jimenez, he would pick his dad in a heartbeat, and this is another one that Alex really does not want to be. He really does not like being a captain for whatever reason. Yeah. So, but if he does bowl the league, and his dad is back in shape,
which Rick has been back bowling a little bit.
Okay, but he had a work
on the
injury.
road to recovery. Yeah,
he had a work injury several months ago.
And I think it was last summer, actually. It was at the end of last summer because we were supposed to bowl him and Alex in the last week of summer doubles. And
that's right, because he didn't end up bowling the last few weeks of the summer doubles. Okay, so he's been out for a while and he's kind of still getting back to it. So if Rick, let's just go on ahead and assume he's gonna be there.
Okay.
And that's a good a name as any. That's about the same average. So whether it's him or not, I would think that Alex would pick a similar somebody in there. Yeah. So Alex would definitely pick his dad. Trent is definitely picking Hathaway. Yeah. Tennyson takes the high name on the board, period.
But he's picking one in front of Rob.
That is the consideration. He might go with Kevin Burrell. He might go with Adam Riley, just to kind of let Rob have Caitlin.
Yeah.
But I could also see Mike going, oh no, nope. She's mine this year. Because
he strikes me as a little bit of a troll sometimes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just got enough of that to make you think. If I was picking there, I would let Rob have Caitlin. I would really want Caitlin. And if I'm looking at that going, okay, Kevin Burrell's there, I like that. Adam Riley is there, I also like that. Austin Goodale, Jared's also really close. We're getting into some value picks down here with what we got available. I think Jared's going to go higher than that. I like a James Hoff pick, Josh King, Matt Carpenter, Jaden. So there's some really good names that are still left on the board at this point. So if I decided to get somebody, Yuri, if I decided to go on ahead and let Rob have Caitlin, there's still plenty of names that I feel like I can work with. And sometimes, Caitlin has Caitlin's kind of like a Carolyn Doran Ballard.
Yeah.
Sometimes she just has carry issues.
Yep.
But she's going to hit the pocket every single shot. So she's kind of a tough one to let somebody else have. But I can also see several other picks that I would be looking at in that position too. That being said, Tennyson always takes the highest average on the board.
Let's work through this. Let's say Tennyson takes Caitlin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put that in just for the sake of a little bit of chaos. What do you think Rob does?
I think he goes for Warren.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So let's just do it for the sake of it. And even then, it's not going to change things too much. Either way, Tennyson is still going to be. So whether you take Caitlin, Kevin, Adam, whatever else, he's still going to be about that same average.
445 to 450 on this board is about where I'd expect him to land. So.
Yeah, and so Rob, if he could take Caitlin, he would. But if he can't, then he is going to get Warren. And so he's going to be he's going to be in 445 territory anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then Nick, I'm just penciling him in for James Hoff because I mean
Yeah, he
the
bowled with
team
him.
struggled a little bit, but it was more just their top two guys didn't have a great year. I felt like James,
Yeah.
especially second half of the year, was much more solid as a 3-hole guy. And Nick's just kind of wants to come in and bowl and call it a night. And I think James kind of has that same approach a little bit.
Yeah, James definitely fits the vibe
Yeah.
that Nick, I think, would be going for. But Nick also likes to do crazy things. Like he didn't know any of the he didn't know who he was picking, and he's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll just pick all the guys that I don't know this year.
Yeah.
So he might
Why
want to
not?
completely mix it up again.
Yeah.
Or I think that somebody in James Hoff would be somebody that even if I was kind of on that wavelength, I'd be like, okay, well now I got a guy at least. Maybe I still pick a couple new people, the last one, but I think that Hoff would be on his radar.
Yeah. Gromlovitz, and this does assume that he bowls.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be a really interesting pick because there's several different ways he can go here.
Yeah.
The troll gene is very strong with him, but he's also fairly competitive.
Yeah.
And he bowled collegiately.
Yeah.
And he also told me that like when he drafts, he does like to kind of like he's thinking this year they might try to build a team that's just going to make the lane impossible unless you're playing fifth arrow.
Yeah.
Combine all of that together, it would not shock me one bit to see Matt Carpenter or Josh King go to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I could
think
see
someone
that.
in that tier, or maybe Freed, but I don't know how well he and Jared get along. Something along those lines would not shock me in the slightest for Tyler to do.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be what he would go for. Another name that we talked about was Chris Quidiche. That might be a little bit of a reach. But even doing the math, that actually puts him in a good spot.
If he takes Chris, that puts him really early in the second round down at 442.
Yeah. Now he would miss out. He would have to think, okay, if I take Quidiche, then he's going to lose out on Josh King, Matt Carpenter, or whatever else, who are a couple of two-handers.
Yeah. If he takes Chris, that gets him fourth pick of the second round. And this is where average strategy really comes into play. It's like the last 6 or so picks of the round, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So Tyler's looking, let's say he goes Freed. That puts him at effectively almost the highest average currently on the board. 449, you have to assume most of the people behind you are going to end up in that same ballpark, except for possibly me, depending on what I end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
So by taking a Freed or a Kevin Burrell, that's putting him at the very end of the second round. Versus if you take Chris, that's getting you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 picks at most before you're picking again, really, from a probability perspective. Mm-hmm. And so then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Walk out with Chris and like worst case from an average perspective, Jerry from the 13th pick. That's actually not a bad spot to be in at all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you got to, when you're thinking about positioning, you have to kind of do this reverse engineering a little bit, kind of almost on the fly of like, okay, how many people are out there and what are the implications of a value pick if I make it, if I make that pick essentially.
Yeah. So
pencil him in for Quidditch, you think?
I would do that just to make it a little bit more interesting because this is also towards the end of the first round is when the 215 or the 220-ish averages on the board start getting skipped because people are starting to look at, gosh, I can take this name that's available, but are you going to get value out of Kevin Burrell and Adam Riley and Austin? Kevin, that's one of the highest averages he's had, and he keeps it in play. And so I would pencil him in for if nothing else, just doing this again next year.
Yeah.
Adam Riley, I could see the same thing too, because he just keeps it in play and he's got that ball roll that gives him, a lot of territory on the lane. And even when they get choppy or they get nasty, he can still hit the pocket. So I would pencil him in again for about
Yeah.
the same that he did.
215-ish. Yeah.
Yeah,
Both of these
215 to
guys, I'm
220.
expecting to be 215. Yeah, somewhere in the high two teens, realistically.
Yeah, 215 to 220 is the zone, and so you're going to get what you pay for with them.
Yeah.
Which, depending on how you look at it, could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
From one side, you know what you're getting, but when you're looking at picking in the second round, does Zach want to put himself at 450 plus?
Yeah, because if he takes Kevin, that puts him at at least
all of a sudden
through
he's the lowest.
14. He's looking at a bottom 5 pick second round.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of do you want to do something like that? Or do you want to do something a little different, like take Matt Lennox, which gets him middle of the pack?
Yeah, and Matt
I can see
Lennox.
something along those lines happening for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not Lennox specifically, but
yeah, but somebody down there, it's like, okay, well, you're starting to look for value down there. It's like, okay, who can I get that's going to give me the best value out of the two teams? Somebody that's going to be competitive, because I've done this before, and it's been like, okay, well, I want to play for later rounds, but I end up with 3 leadoff bowlers instead of a 3 bowler, and then whatever I end up with, and that can kind of that can hurt more than having good draft picks, because you look at how many pins you're costing. You look at the position, but how many pins are you costing yourself at the same time? Is there still,
in terms of season pinfall type of
yeah. So if you're costing yourself, just say that you think you're costing yourself, okay, if I get this, and I'm going to cost myself probably 6-7 positions. But you look at the difference between Brent at 210, how many names there are between him and Austin Jacobson. Just four pins.
Yeah.
Austin's right under Yuri.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How many picks? So you're losing 4 pins. I would go on ahead and get the higher average. I would go on ahead and take somebody higher up, because you're not going to cost yourself the max you're going to cost yourself is because he's already, depending on who he picks, he's still going to be later in that second round. The higher averages are just going to be the bottom 8 picks, basically, unless they do some really crazy stuff. And then even then, there's still not. Even then, again, he could go John Hardman.
He has to reach to John Hardman. He's still picking third best case.
Still picking.
Yeah, exactly.
He's still not picking first in the second round. Yeah. So, and that's giving up 10 theoret on paper, because I think John Hardman's going to average more than that, but he's still giving up 10 pins on paper to gain him like 8 spots, maybe.
Yeah. And that's not
10 spots.
Yeah. And at that point, that's when, unless you can make that play while also getting someone who is at their like absolute floor, it's tough to justify that trade-off, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think I could actually see him going for like a Yuri, because Zach just kind of wants to show up and bowl. Like he's a very competitive person, but at the same time, his team was kind of just, all right, let's go bowling type of deal.
Yeah, and Yuri's kind of the same direction. Yuri is competitive, but he's also pretty laid back. So
yeah, exactly. And that is, thinking about floors, that's closer to a floor for him.
And that's a nice compromise. That's a nice compromise too, because that is some value without hurting him too much on the second round. And so that would be a good place to go for a Yuri, John Bate, and a Mason Alvarado, kind of that kind of zone. And Ken Caudell,
Jay and Ken always bowl together. That's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, and so
if Caudell is there, he takes him.
And Ken will be there.
Yeah.
Ken will be there. And I think that's another one where everybody kind of understands and knows that Jay picks Ken.
Yeah.
And so that's,
which I think you touched on this on Monday, is it's hilarious how different their personalities are.
Oh my God.
I asked Jay about it. I was like, why do you keep drafting? He's like, he makes me smile.
Yeah. And Jay never smiles. So.
Correct. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, you can't get Ken to stop smiling, and you can't get Jay to. The pictures don't exist with Jay smiling, I don't think.
That is factually accurate. I can confirm that from it.
Yeah. All right. So another curveball here would be Eric. really, this is his first year in the league. He's getting to know people. And so at this
Yeah.
point, he's not going to be terribly sure who he's drafting, really. He did bowl with Adam Riley on Trevor's team. So I could see that just being, he knows exactly what he's getting with Adam.
Yeah.
And that would be a comfort pick. And also, Adam, I think, could be competitive as a three bowler.
Yeah.
Or as competitive as anybody else on the rest of on what he's got available anyway.
Yeah. The other place, because I haven't, my theory, I tend to agree with what you're saying. I think Eric's going to go with someone he knows in the 1st round, which you're not going to be there because you're a captain. I'm not going to be there. His team was Adam at 218, and then
Brent.
Where's Brent?
Right under Crediche.
Oh yeah, Brent at 210, Adam at 218. The curveball is, I don't know how well he knows Don Glasscock, but Don bowls a lot at Olathe, and Eric bowls a lot there too. And Don at 211 feels like a pretty good price. And also someone who kind of has that in common a little bit more, like living on the Kansas City side of things. So I do agree that Eric goes familiar face, though.
I've done that before. I've picked some Topeka names that I knew who they were in the draft, and I had the advantage of knowing who they were, and that would be a good place to put him, because Adam, if I'm him in his position, I'm like, gosh, that's going to put me at 450 and nobody else is over 450. I'm looking to,
if he takes Adam, that bumps him to the last 3 of second round.
Yeah.
If he reaches down to, if he goes to Brent, oops. Yeah, this is all right. There we go. If he takes Brent, that's a top 6 pick, second round.
He's in good shape.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, he knows Brent. He bowled this year with him. He knows Don. So there's a few different ways he could play it. He might also be thinking it's like, I need a 3 bowler is the other thing, and so you just might have to concede a little bit.
Yeah, and it was a tale of 2 halves for Brent. He was 201 the first half and 218 the second half.
Yeah.
So he knows, like Eric knows firsthand, that Brent is capable of a lot more than 210. So I could kind of see that actually happening, and that gets him in a good position for the second round.
Yeah, that would be, I definitely think Russ takes Mason again.
Yeah,
Mason's got.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
Mason's got a ton of upside, and Russ likes that, and I think that they worked really well together. And so I think that Mason's just the pick if he's there, because again, Mason I think could get to 220. He just needs a little bit more experience, so he's in the right place to give Russ a decent pick next round.
Yeah,
or not a bad pick next round.
13th in the second round, which is not terrible.
Yeah, which kind of sets him up a little bit for I could see him taking Mason and then John Hardman in the second round, or in round 2, which would give him a really good pick in the third round. So he could
654. That's going to be pretty low.
That's going to be really competitive. Yeah. That's going to be really competitive going into that third round. So he could end up with a lot of, he could have kind of a year that you had this year, because I could see Mason getting up to close to 220. Maybe not 220, but really close. John Hardman, I think, can get back up to 215-ish, and so he can go plus 5 or 6 on Mason, plus 6, 7, 8 on John, and then have his pick of the litter in the last round, and he'll have a really tough team next year.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if he takes Nathan instead, Nathan, John, whoever's there, because I have a feeling that Alex is going to take one of them in the second round too.
Yeah, that would not surprise me.
So whoever's
kind of left over at that
point. But Russ is going to be picking before Alex in the last round, however it shakes out, because Alex is going to take, if Gentry's on the board, I can pretty well guarantee that's happening.
Yeah.
Because he needs firepower.
Yep.
And he can figure out the rest later.
Yep. And now we're to the interesting part. And this is where, because I've actually been doing an embarrassingly large amount of thinking about this. And I'm actually going to go over to a different tab. Let's add this column. And let's look at who is available. So this is what we're looking at right here. This is essentially a available player list. If someone has a team name here in the team column, that means they've been drafted. If they have a number in this column F right here, then that means they're available.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go on ahead and just filter out all of the drafted folks. I can go down to 208, and I'm still picking 16th in the second round.
Yeah.
And so that illustrates kind of the pickle that I'm going to be in effectively. Is the 17-18 line is around 451 or so. And realistically, that's where, like, kind of the way I'm thinking about it is there are two options that I have here, and really only two options. Number one is I fire on a solid 3-hole guy who I want to bowl with and figure out the rest later.
Yeah.
Option two, and this is something that is in consideration, although there's really only two guys who I would be okay doing this with.
I see
and
that.
I think you see where I'm going with this, I think.
Yeah, because
there are two names that I'm looking at for value picks. John Hardman, 206, Tom Patton, if he's there, at 198. Because thinking about it this way, if I take John Hardman right here, it's not 100% ideal, but looking at second round order, that does get me up 6 in the second round.
Yeah.
And a lot of value there. The downside here is, let's look at it, and this is kind of getting back to the reverse engineering side of things. Solid known quantity 3-hole guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, let's say 4 between those. Like, I think one of Josh and Jaden will be really solid this year. That feels a little closer to ceiling for both of them than floor. 3, 4, or 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
If I go value right here, I have to gamble that this is me gambling essentially that out of the 11 teams that pick ahead of me in the second round, at least 4 stay out of that territory. And that really is the unknown. Now, where this does get a little interesting is if I were to take Patton here, that gets me all the way to second pick.
And that's big upside.
Monster value. He talks a lot, but he and I get along pretty well.
Yeah, Tom's great.
Yeah. And so then I've got my huge value, and then I'm still like, if I do that, I'm still guaranteed to have Freed, Burrell, Carpenter, Jerry, at least 3 of those making it back to me in the second round. And then if I take, like, let's say I take Freed right here, that still got me a 650 going to the third round. It feels pretty good.
Yeah.
And so that's the other kind of potential path that I can go down. But really, like, it really is crazy how much of a difference there is between, let's do this. Looking at it from a results perspective, is Hunter Cole at 208. Really does not change my draft position almost at all versus Matt Carpenter at 216.
Yeah.
And so that's where that value proposition does come into play a little bit. Is, if I take Matt Carpenter, I'm still 5 out of second. 451 to 456 is 4.5 pins. I'm still 4.5 back of second to last pick. So that does lock up my 3-hole guy, but then I'm looking at, pretty obviously a really late pick second round.
Yeah.
Third round realistic, I'm going to be in the 10 to 15 range, best case. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, ultimately, if you go, because you could do the same thing, you could go ahead and take the name that you want and get them absolutely, knowing that Tom Patton is probably still going to be there for you no matter where you're picking in the second round. So if you have kind of an ace in the hole, John Hardman will not be there. I can guarantee you that John is not making it through round 2.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But this way, instead of leaving him as your ace in the hole, you can get who you want absolutely locked up. If you go Patton, then you're picking early in the second round, and then you get who you want, and you're still at 650. That's like a perfect place to be.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
say that would be my strategy. If I was doing it, that's the way that I would go.
What, go patent and then early second?
I would, yeah, with
Yeah,
the with who's on the lower, with who's going to be available in round 3.
yeah,
I'm my thing is trying to draft for round 3 as much as, and
yeah,
that kind of seems kind of stupid to say, but I'm going to be drafting for round 3.
yeah.
Aside from, if Tobias is available when he gets to me, he's my number 1. Danny would be my number 2.
I mean, even if
I'm
Tobias is like, let's work through that. Tobias is there, so you take Tobias, and then Tobias and Hardman, you're in mid 650s. That's still
Yeah.
not a bad spot to be in.
And see, that's the thing is my average being lower. Either way, I get a 3-hole bowler, and I still see enough. I'd also look at DJ Swanson, Justin Weddage.
Yep.
There's still plenty of names in that 205 to 210 zone in the third round that I would, or that I might take in the second round. But I think 650 again, 653 is going to put me in a good spot for round 3.
Yeah,
I would be
exactly.
okay with that.
Yeah. And the
So,
other kind of thought that I've had, obviously, I think if Jerry or Freed are there, they're very high on my list for this point of the draft, and I could see at least one of those making it there.
mhm.
The flip side is I did bowl with Smallwood 2 years ago, and he and I get along really well, and 211 is not his ceiling.
Yeah.
So that's kind of in consideration as well. And I don't know who else is going to be on the board as well, but if Don Glasscock being there at 211, I see him as a 3-hole threat, and if he's there at 211, then that's a pretty
Yeah.
compelling case as well.
Yeah. So
definitely, I'm going to be in the same position as Zach. I think he and I are probably going to think about it somewhat similarly.
mhm.
Value and position, how much of that can we get combined? And if it's
Yeah.
more of one than the other, then we take our lumps.
Yeah. So if we would, and again, just for not going through the whole thing, because I don't know who's going to get what. Now, if we just talk like personal picks,
Yeah.
I would have, based off of this, I'm going to have an early second round pick.
Very early. Yep.
And I think that this is probably the way it's going to go. I will take Tobias if he gets to me. I just don't, I think that, especially if Jerry doesn't end up bowling, I think he's definitely, the way that it sounds, he's definitely leaning towards that, or he wants to get back into the league because he has bowled this league before.
Yeah.
And I think if that name is on the board, I think he's definitely, or I think with that name on the board, Tobias has a better chance of getting to me. But if he's not, Tobias just absolutely doesn't get to me. And I would think for Alex or Jesse, Tobias would be an ideal pick.
Yeah. But I mean, realistically, you're going to have one of Jerry, Tobias, Danny.
Yeah.
Spot no matter what.
So it changes it a little. If I do actually get Tobias, I do end up picking quite a bit later in the second round.
Yeah, what was that delta? Because you got second pick going to Tobias gives you 12th pick.
Yeah. And so that's, again, I still think with who's available and who I'm actually looking at, I would be okay with that because there's still plenty of big upside, lower average, big upside bowlers that I could go for that would still give me a nice looking pick in the third round.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of 650 to 655 range is going to be kind of a good mid-second round landing spot.
If I do happen to get Danny, and I have some other, and I have what's on the board available, I am looking really hard at the Josh King, Matt Carpenter range, possibly Baton, possibly Noah, but I'm almost looking down, seeing, okay, well, who else is there? I could see picking up Norm Brewster, Brent.
Norm at 211. I mean, you take Norm. that he's borderline 3-hole, but I mean, he was a rock star in the leadoff spot for
Yeah.
Crouch's team this year.
Norm was great in the leadoff spot, and so I think that if I had a choice, if I have the choice with him and just plug Norm in just for the sake of it,
I mean, you take Norm, that gets you to 650.
Yeah, and so I'm going to be picking basically first in the last round.
Probably going to be 3 to 7.
So I've got
where that lands. Yeah.
And this is the other thing, is that I think that Norm will still be available at 12 if I get Tobias instead of Danny. I think Norm, Brent one of those two will still be available.
Yeah.
And if that does happen, I'm 658, which makes me a little bit less comfortable for the last round.
Probably going to have you in this range. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I could also dip down a little bit too.
Yeah.
And
John Hardman.
John Hardman, DJ Swanson, Wedgie.
Ryan. If Ryan's not going to make it out of the second, but 205 is a huge value for him.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely options there. But it'll be really interesting to see how this progresses. You know, obviously this board is essentially people who bowled this league who we are 99% sure are coming back, plus a couple people that we are 99% sure or fairly certain are joining the league.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is a pretty thin board for 18, but at the same time, it's probably not that far off from a lot of the decisions that we're going to have to be thinking through in real time in the draft room. And that's kind of what the fun of this is. That's the fun of this process, is thinking through those decisions.
Yeah, it's going to be close. Some of the names are going to be different. And I think that some of the people that bowled this year are not going to bowl next year. And we're going to have some new names in there. There's a lot of the Ottawa kids this is good experience for them. Too, Justin Preston on there is also somebody that I've got on my list.
Very much so. Yeah. No, he's definitely on my. If he's there, let's say I take Jerry, and then somehow Justin falls to me at the end of the second round.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost a heck the draft. I'm taking Justin and building a super team type of deal, and just taking my licks with third round.
Yeah, this is one of those things where if I could end up getting Danny or Tobias. And then one of Norm, Justin, Brent.
Yeah,
I'm not terribly concerned with,
or even
that
Matt Lennox.
leaves me with.
Yeah, if Matt Lennox comes back and bowls full time.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is I'm not terribly concerned with who I'm left with at the third. If I've got Tobias or Danny, and then Justin, Norm, Brent, I'm not terribly concerned about the third round. That's more or less just, okay, who do I want to bowl with now?
Yeah, exactly.
Of the available options that are left, of course, I think we'll end up with 80 to 82 names, probably, or I guess 80. I think we'll have a few extras to pick from.
Yeah, and like I said, the board last year I think was 79 or 80.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's about the range that we'll be in again. So I think there'll be a couple extra names.
And I think once people see the prize fund chart from the dues going up this year, that'll kind of raise
I think there's going to be a lot of people coming back.
A $45,000 prize fund from a 34-week league, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
with very little, all of that is bowler money. It's not sponsor money. So it's it felt tough when you were paying 30, but you're paying 120 to 150 bucks a month to bowl a league.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of that is
at the end of that, we get a pizza party and $1,000.
Yeah. At the end of it, you walk away with a pizza party and well into the 4-figure range if your team had a decent year. It's tough to say no to that.
Yeah.
And it is a really fun league to bowl in. So, what do you say we get out of here, Luke?
Yeah.
Probably need to actually get back to the day job for a bit for the pizza party tonight. I think just from a quick kind of programming note, Luke and I are going to try to do something either on his channel or mine. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to look, kind of talking about our experience in Medlin next year. I know Luke's going to do a draft preview show on Breakdown Pair the week of the draft.
Yeah, we could probably have you on that one too, because that's
totally down for that.
Yeah. We should have the list by then.
we'll have a
And
list and we can all talk through kind of, live on air like we have here, what we might think might happen.
yeah, and if things get interesting, Jonathan could even end up on it because he's right behind Keeler.
Yeah.
So if Tyler moves and Nick decides that he can't, because Nick misses
If
most of the
Tyler,
year anyway.
if Alex doesn't come back and Tyler moves, pause.
Yeah. Yeah, Jonathan could be a captain really easily.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot that can change between now and then, but draft, I believe, is August 15th, he said. Is that right, Luke? Your birthday?
Yeah, that's
Nice.
what it should be because it's normally the draft is normally the day before our league meeting for the Friday.
Yep.
And we always start in the third week of August. The league always starts, so the draft is always the week of the teens, wherever that puts it. So
yeah,
so it would be the
draft. Yeah, draft will be on August 15th, which means we'll have
which is only 3 months away.
Time flies when you're having fun, man. This is
yeah.
But yeah, so we'll have some sort of a draft preview show as a part of the breakdown pair that week on Luke's channel, and then I don't know if it's going to be continuing these streams next year, Luke, or if this kind of goes by the wayside on our channel. I've been thinking about kind of doing a bi-monthly or monthly kind of what's going on in bowling type of show on my channel.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, I do that once a month and just have you on to talk a little bit about kind of what's going on with both of our teams in Medlin. Something like that could be a fun way to do it as well. So
yeah,
I want to keep this going somehow, but whether it's here or elsewhere, it'll hopefully still happen. It's just kind of exact format unknown for next season.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. It might be one of those things where this is not a great time to do it, or we might pair it with breakdown pair somehow.
Yeah, have a little segment on breakdown pair every couple of weeks of
that would
here's what's going on in Medlin. Yeah,
that would probably be the best because there's a lot of times we run out of things to talk about on the breakdown pair, and then having this its own show again at noon or in the afternoon on a Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, especially if Hawes is a captain, we have 3 teams to talk about every time we're on the
air. Yeah. So that could actually even make it pretty interesting if that happens. So yeah, we might even just plan that way. We don't necessarily need to do something every single week.
Yeah, it does feel like it gets a little stale sometimes.
Yeah.
So. Fun to talk about, and it's kind of. I hope y'all have enjoyed us kind of letting you inside our brains a little bit this year of kind of how this season has gone. Obviously, I didn't give you much of a choice, but it was awesome having you on the team this year, Luke. It's been a really fun year, and you definitely made me better.
Yeah. It's been a good overall. It's been a good year. There's definitely some ups and downs, a lot of things I wish that I could take back or have done differently, but at the same time, I'm not done.
I mean, you gutted on Phil balls twice that cost us points. So
yeah.
I'm sure Tyler will be very happy to hear me reminding you of that.
Yeah.
But it was an awesome year. And I think this is something this is kind of my closing thought as we get ready to sign off here, Luke, is I think it is important to remember that at the end of the day, it's just league, and there are going to be good years and there are going to be bad years. And it's like something like this is as much about the experience you gain and the people you meet along the way. And ultimately, it's been a dream year for me in this league, both personally and for the team. But at the end of the day, I made new friends and I got to have fun bowling. That's the goal. That's the dream. And it worked great this year. So,
yeah. And realistically speaking, I mean, if somebody told you before the league started that you were going to be a few like, not like actual pins of average, but just a few pins short of 240 on the year. I got back over 220 on my captain again. And so if you say that that's what's going to happen at the beginning of the year, it's just like, yep, we're sold.
I'm good. Yeah, let's do it.
So,
I mean, I missed a 10 pin in game 3 and that cost me averaging 240. Oh, well, but I mean, best bowled year of league for me ever personally. You had a great kind of rebound year of actually getting your feet under you the right way, lefty, I think is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Seeing that growth throughout the year was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'd like to be a little bit more consistent next year, but again, if 220, whatever, however way you chop it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have been So I could have shot 660 to 680 every single week and would have been probably just as happy as if I, had a few 570s in there with the 730s, 740s or whatever. So,
I was drafting from the 14 spot, and I got a team that averaged 890 for an entire season. So
yeah,
can't be mad about that from a scoring perspective, and had a lot of fun along the way. So yeah, I guess kind of signing off for the summer at this point. Thank you for doing this with me every week. It's been a lot of fun, and
yeah,
it'll be fun bowling against you in the fall too.
Yeah, when we might, I imagine you might do some streams over the summer because we've got our whenever we bowl each other in the doubles league.
Yeah, I'm actually streaming every week of the doubles league.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
The one thing that's going to make me mad is if we happen to bowl you guys the week that we're in Vegas.
Yeah.
That which will be like perfect karma for that to have happened, but
yeah,
it is what it is. So, yes, I will be streaming that every week over on my channel, which is Shim Wrecker Enterprises. Definitely go over there and drop a sub, and don't forget to sub to Luke's channel and drop a like on this video because all hail the algorithm.
Yep, the algorithm.
Yeah, the almighty algorithms.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we will. We'll have a because we should have, barring a few late additions or whatever that week, we should have a final list.
The list didn't change that much between like Sunday and Thursday last year.
And I think that they normally try to have a draft list out a week before. So they will have it out on the Thursday before we draft. So so we should have something to work with. And that's what we've done on Breakdown Pair in the past, is we've always done kind of a mock draft or looked at the list or whatever else. So
we just have a fancier way to look at it this time. So.
Yeah. So all right. Cool. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks for watching all season and keeping up with us. And we'll see what happens from here. But yeah, league is
I think you found some summer homework there, Luke.
Yeah. Might have some videos coming out or something. But for now, thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you sometime.
And may the strikes be with you.